12 names. That's the whole bloodline of rock and roll. Not the biggest sellers, not the ones with the most Grammys or the longest tours, the ones who actually rewired how music works permanently.
Out on the street now, you're gonna have to get used to it.
Every riff you've ever felt in your chest, every song that made you pull the car over and just sit there, traces back to this list. By the time we hit number 1, you'll feel exactly why it had to be them. Let's get into it. Number 12, Nirvana. Number 12, and before you say anything, yes, they only made 3 studio albums. But here's what most people miss about Nirvana. They didn't just create a sound, they ended one. By 1991, hair metal owned rock radio. Big production, bigger hair, guitar solos that lasted longer than most relationships. Labels were printing money and nobody saw a reason to stop. And then, on September 24th of that year, a band from Aberdeen, Washington dropped Nevermind, and within 3 months, everything that had dominated rock for a decade wasn't just fading, it was gone, overnight. Here's what gets me every time I think about this. Kurt Cobain didn't set out to overthrow anything. He wasn't trying to start a movement. He was trying to make a record his friends would like. The raw vulnerability, the quiet verses that detonated into those choruses, that wasn't strategy. That was just how he heard music in his head. And it turned out that's how an entire generation had been hearing it too. They just didn't have a word for it yet. After Smells Like Teen Spirit took over MTV, Cobain reportedly hated what the song had become. Hated that something he made from genuine pain had turned into a party anthem. You know that feeling? When the thing that was most private about you becomes the most public, that's a specific kind of hurt. When the wound becomes someone else's good time. And then April 1994, Kurt was gone at 27, and every band that came after, every group that turned the distortion up in the decade that followed, was either a direct response to Nirvana or a direct imitation. That influence didn't die with him. If anything, it multiplied. Nirvana made it okay for rock music to be vulnerable and furious at the same time. And if that combination ever hit you somewhere real, you already know why they're on this list. Number 11, Bruce Springsteen. Number 11. And I know what some of you might be thinking, but hear me out because this one is bigger than the records. Bruce Springsteen released Born to Run in the summer of 1975, and on October 27 of that year, his face appeared simultaneously on the covers of Time magazine and Newsweek. That had never happened to a rock musician before. Not Elvis, not the Beatles, not Bob Dylan. Bruce Springsteen, 25 years old, barely a household name, on both covers at once. And the reason it happened wasn't hype alone. It was because people recognized something real in what he was doing. A voice that sounded like it was singing directly to them about their town, their job that was going nowhere, the car that was their only way out. Here's what gets overlooked about Springsteen's influence. He didn't invent a genre. He invented a relationship between an artist and their audience. That direct line, that feeling of being seen by the music rather than just listening to it. He showed an entire generation of rock artists that the song could carry the full weight of ordinary lives, working class lives, immigrant lives, the life of anyone who'd ever felt left behind by the version of America they were promised. And the artists who followed that thread, Tom Petty, Arcade Fire, The Killers, 100 others, they all heard that and understood something new about what rock music could actually be about. Here's the part that still staggers me. He's been doing this for 50 years. 50 years of writing, recording, touring, and still selling out stadiums on every continent. Still sounding like he means every single word. That's not a career, that's a covenant with an audience. And very few artists in rock history have ever kept it that long.
Let's look at the numbers. Only 9% of you are actually subscribed. Honestly, that's tough to see. Our team spends days hunting down archives and verifying every single fact just to tell these stories right. If you've made it this far into the video, you're clearly part of the community, so please hit subscribe. It costs nothing and helps us immensely. Now, for those already subscribed, very few of you have made the jump to our membership, and that's a hard pill to swallow because you're the ones who know our value best. If this channel has moved you or inspired you, consider joining. It's the price of one coffee, but it's the literal fuel for this channel. Let's keep this alive together. Back to the story.
Number 10, the Rolling Stones. Number 10. And here's the first thing you need to understand about the Rolling Stones. They were never supposed to outlast anyone. They formed in London in 1962 as a blues cover band. 5 young guys obsessed with American music that most of Britain had never heard. And they were raw, dangerous in a way that made parents uncomfortable in a completely different register than the Beatles. The Beatles were charming. The Stones were threatening. That distinction mattered. You know that riff, you could hum it right now without thinking. Satisfaction, 1965. You've heard it in movies, in arenas, in department stores, probably. And the reason it never gets old, and the reason it has survived 60 years of overexposure, is that the feeling underneath it never changes. That restless dissatisfaction, that wanting something you can't name, that's not a 1965 feeling, that's a human feeling. And they captured it perfectly. But here's the thing that doesn't get talked about enough. The Stones didn't just have a run. They outlasted everyone. Brian Jones was dead by 1969. The 70s nearly destroyed them. The 80s were complicated. Charlie Watts, the heartbeat of the whole operation, kept steady until his death in 2021. And still, Mick and Keith kept going. What they left behind isn't just the catalog, it's the proof that rock and roll could grow older without growing soft. Every band still standing after decades, every artist who refused to quietly disappear, every act that chose to keep playing long after it would have been easier to stop. They're walking a path the Rolling Stones paved. And some of y'all have seen them live and know exactly what I mean when I say nobody else has ever moved like Mick Jagger on a stage. Number 9, David Bowie.
Take your protein pills and put...
Number 9. And no one on this list changed the rules of what a rock artist could be more completely than David Bowie. Think about where rock music was in 1972. It was mostly about authenticity, being real, being raw, being yourself. And then Bowie walked on stage as Ziggy Stardust, a fictional alien rock star from Mars in platform boots and a lightning bolt across his face, with Mick Ronson playing guitar like his life depended on it. And instead of being rejected for being fake, audiences went completely sideways for it, because something about the artifice felt more honest than honesty. Here's what Bowie understood that almost nobody else did. Identity isn't fixed. The person you are at 20 doesn't have to be the person you are at 30. You can change. You can become someone new. And in a world that told most people, especially young people who felt wrong in their own skin, that they had to stay exactly who they were told to be, that message wasn't just interesting, it was life-changing, literally for some people. Ziggy Stardust, young Americans, Heroes, Let's Dance. Those aren't just albums. They're four completely different artists living in the same body, all doing it at a world-class level across a span of 12 years. And the artists who cite Bowie as a primary influence, Lady Gaga, Trent Reznor, St. Vincent, Lord, 100 others, they're not just citing the music. They're citing permission. Permission to be strange. Permission to reinvent yourself before anyone tells you who you are. Permission to refuse to be pinned down. And if you've ever felt like the version of yourself you were performing for the world wasn't quite right, you know why that permission matters. That gift is still being unwrapped. Number 8, Bob Dylan. Number 8, and I know some people will argue Bob Dylan isn't a rock artist. They're wrong, and the story of why they're wrong is one of the most important moments in the history of this music. Dylan started in Greenwich Village in the early 1960s. Acoustic guitar, protest songs, the moral voice of a generation, the freewheeling Bob Dylan, 1963. The times they are a-changin', 1964. He was the folk movement's spiritual center, and everyone who loved him had an idea of what he was supposed to be. Then in July 1965, at the Newport Folk Festival, he walked out with an electric band, and the crowd booed him. Some people say Pete Seeger, one of the most revered folk musicians alive, was so outraged he threatened to cut the power cable with an axe. Want to know what Dylan did? He kept playing. And here's why that moment changed everything. What Dylan did by plugging in wasn't just changing his sound. He was announcing that music couldn't be owned by any movement, any ideology, any crowd. That art belonged to the artist first. The ripple effect of that single decision runs through every rock musician who ever made a creative choice their audience wasn't ready for. And then there are the words, like a rolling stone, the bridge all along the watchtower. The entire language of what a rock lyric could mean. Dylan rewrote it from the ground up. He proved that a song could carry the weight of poetry without losing the power of a backbeat. In 2016, he won the Nobel Prize in Literature. Not peace, not medicine, literature for rock and roll songs. If that doesn't tell you something about the scale of what he changed, I'm not sure what will. Number 7, Elvis Presley.
Case of which I'm certain.
Number 7, and here's where the story gets complicated, and I think it's worth sitting with that. Elvis Presley walked into Sun Studio in Memphis in the summer of 1954, 21 years old, and recorded That's All Right, a blues song written by Arthur Crudup. When radio DJ Dewey Phillips played it on WHBQ, the switchboard lit up. People called in wanting to know who it was, and when Phillips told them the singer's name, some callers were surprised. They'd assumed from the sound that he was black. That moment sits at the center of a conversation that hasn't ended, because Elvis didn't just introduce Black American music to white America. He became the face of it. He got the covers, the television slots, the movie contracts, and the black artists who invented that sound, who built it from the ground up, often didn't. Here's what you have to hold at the same time. Elvis genuinely loved that music. It wasn't cynical. He was a kid who grew up hearing gospel and R&B in Tupelo, Mississippi, and it was the most real thing in his life. His feeling for it was authentic, and he changed the cultural landscape in ways that genuinely cannot be overstated. The Ed Sullivan appearances in 1956, the hips they tried to film from the waist up because the movement itself was considered obscene, those performances cracked something open in American culture that was never going to close again. but the conversation about who really built this music, about Little Richard, about Chuck Berry, about the artists who gave everything and got so much less back, that conversation matters. It belongs right alongside the influence, because the next few entries are exactly about that. And if you've never thought about it that way before, I hope what comes next changes that.
To think I did all that.
Number 6, Little Richard. Number 6. And I want you to understand something before I say his name. Everything you love about rock and roll, the screaming, the abandon, the piano that sounds like it's about to catch fire, the performer who makes you feel like the music physically cannot contain them, this man invented that. Little Richard, born Richard Wayne Penniman in Macon, Georgia, 1932. And when Tutti Frutti hit in 1955, the sound that came out of those speakers had never existed before. That opening howl, a wop bop, a loo bop, a wop bam boom, wasn't music that anyone had heard. It was something arriving from somewhere else entirely. Here's what gets left out of most of this history. Little Richard was a black, queer man performing at the absolute height of American segregation. The flamboyance, the eyeliner, the wild showmanship, that was radical in ways that are almost impossible to fully grasp. Now, he wasn't just breaking musical rules, he was breaking every social rule simultaneously, and he kept going anyway. Paul McCartney said that learning to sing Long Tall Sally the way Little Richard sang it was what taught him how to scream. Jimi Hendrix spent time in Little Richard's touring band in the early 1960s, playing behind the man, watching what fire looked like up close. The Beatles covered his songs. The Rolling Stones covered his songs. James Brown studied what he was doing and understood what stage presence could actually mean. And what did Little Richard get in return? He got told to tone it down. He got paid less. He got passed over. Multiple times, he quit music entirely for religion because the industry made him feel like the thing he'd given to the world had been taken from him and handed to someone else. That's not a footnote in rock history. That's a wound at the center of it. And if you've never heard his name spoken with the same reverence as the people he directly taught, I'd argue that's the whole story right there. Number 5, Led Zeppelin. Number 5. And there's a version of rock music that exists without Led Zeppelin, and it would sound so much smaller than what we have. Jimmy Page, Robert Plant, John Paul Jones, John Bonham, they formed in London in 1968. And in their first 2 years, they recorded Led Zeppelin 2, and Led Zeppelin 3. 3 albums in 2 years. No filler, no contractual obligation tracks, just idea after idea after idea arriving at full force. And if you've ever had the bass line of Whole Lotta Love hit you at the right volume in your chest before your ears even process it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Here's what casual listeners sometimes miss. Led Zeppelin didn't just make heavy music. They invented the template for it, the quiet to loud dynamic, the folk influence woven through the heaviness, the acoustic passages that made the electric ones hit harder by contrast. In John Bonham's drum sound, engineers have been chasing it for 50 years and still can't fully replicate it. He was doing something with timing and weight that lived somewhere between precision and chaos, and it's never been reproduced exactly. And then there's Stairway to Heaven, a song so culturally embedded that guitar shops in the late 70s and 80s had to post signs, Actual handwritten signs, banning customers from playing the opening riff because the staff couldn't take it anymore. You know which notes I mean. You can hear them right now without me playing them. September 25th, 1980, John Bonham died and the band dissolved. Not a slow fade, not a business dispute. One member gone, Chow and the other three said, "That's it, we're done," because there was no Led Zeppelin without all four of them in the room. And if you've ever been part of something that only worked because of every single person in it, you understand why that was the only possible answer. Number 4, The Velvet Underground. Number 4, and I'll be straight with you, this might be the one that surprises you most on this list, but I'd argue they belong higher. Brian Eno, the producer, the music theorist, one of the most important creative minds in the history of recorded sound, once said this: "The first Velvet Underground album only sold 10,000 copies, but everyone who bought it formed a band." Read that again. Everyone who bought it formed a band. The Velvet Underground, New York City, managed by Andy Warhol, fronted by Lou Reed. Their debut in 1967, the one with the banana on the cover, had songs about heroin addiction, street violence, and the parts of human experience that rock music in 1967 was not supposed to touch. Radio wouldn't play it. Most labels wouldn't have released it. Chess Records passed, Elektra passed. MGM finally did it, and they had no idea what they had. Here's where the influence becomes almost hard to believe. Patti Smith heard them and understood what punk could be. David Bowie heard them and understood that art and rock weren't separate things. REM heard them and understood how to be strange and still reach people. Joy Division heard them and took the darkness further. Talking Heads, Television, The Pixies, Sonic Youth, one band who never had a hit single in their entire career, planted seeds that are still growing 5 decades later. Lou Reed eventually left. The band dissolved, and for years they were a footnote that only the most dedicated music obsessives knew about. Then younger listeners found that first album and felt exactly what those original 10,000 people felt. The shock of recognition. Music that tells you the truth when everything around you is being careful. Some things don't need the whole world to change it. They just need the right 1,000 people. Number 3, Jimi Hendrix. Number 3, and nobody on this list did more with less time. Jimi Hendrix released 3 studio albums before his death on September 18, 1970, at 27 years old. 3 albums. And inside those 3 records, Are You Experienced, Axis Bold as Love, and Electric Ladyland, he fundamentally redefined what the electric guitar was capable of, not just technically, emotionally. He made the instrument do things it wasn't designed to do, and somehow those things were the most expressive sounds anyone had ever heard. Here's a detail I keep coming back to. Hendrix was left-handed, but he played a right-handed Stratocaster strung in reverse so he could control the tremolo arm with his dominant hand. He was solving the physics of the instrument in real time, inventing solutions to problems the guitar wasn't built to have. And out of those solutions came sounds nobody had heard. That intro to Purple Haze, the feedback that becomes a melody on the Star-Spangled Banner at Woodstock in 1969. The way he bent a note past the place notes were supposed to go, and held it there, and the note didn't break. It sang. Every guitarist who came after had to have a Hendrix conversation. Either they spent years trying to figure out how he did it, or they spent years trying to figure out how to stop being compared to him. There was no third option. You couldn't ignore it. And here's what still gets me. He was 27. What would the next 40 years of Jimi Hendrix have sounded like? We'll never know. And that gap, That space where the music could have been might be the most expensive single loss in all of rock history. What he left behind in 4 years is still being discovered. Every generation of guitar players finds it like they're the first ones, and that part still gets me. Number 2, the Beatles.
Hey Jude, don't be a...
Number 2. And I'm going to say something that might feel obvious, but stay with me, because the actual scale of it still staggers me when I sit with it. Before the Beatles, American rock and roll dominated global music. After the Beatles, everything reorganized around them. That's not metaphor. That's just what happened.
to make it better.
John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, Ringo Starr from Liverpool. On February 9th, 1964, they appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show, and 73 million Americans watched. The U.S. population at the time was around 192 million people. Nearly 40% of the country watched the same 4 people on the same night. And by April of that year, the top 5 songs on the American charts were all Beatles songs. All 5. Simultaneously. That had never happened before. It hasn't happened since. But here's what separates them from being just a massive pop phenomenon. They kept changing. Please Please Me to Revolver to Sgt. Pepper's to Abbey Road. Those aren't albums by the same band in any recognizable sense. They evolved so fast, so completely, across just 8 years, that they were essentially running 4 or 5 different musical revolutions simultaneously. And unlike most artists who evolve, every iteration was still them. Still, unmistakably, the Beatles. And the Lennon-McCartney partnership, Lennon's rawness, sharpening McCartney's melody, McCartney's optimism, softening Lennon's darkness, that specific friction produced some of the most perfectly constructed songs in the history of recorded music. Songs that 60 years later, you still can't improve. Songs that still show up in people's heads in the middle of the night for no reason. They broke up in 1970. And rock music has been reckoning with that breakup ever since. But they were only together for 8 years. Think about that. Number 1, Chuck Berry.
Well, if a country boy named Johnny B. Good, who never ever learned to read or...
Number 1. And if you've been watching this list carefully, really watching it, you already know why. Because everyone on this list learned something from Chuck Berry. The Beatles covered him. The Rolling Stones covered him. Jimi Hendrix played his songs early in his career, learning the language. Elvis's style carried his influence. Bob Dylan absorbed it.
Wow, Johnny B. Good.
Led Zeppelin's entire guitar architecture has his fingerprints somewhere on it. Nirvana is downstream of bands who were downstream of bands who were downstream of Chuck Berry. He is the root of almost everything that appears above him on this list. He was born in St. Louis, Missouri in 1926, and in 1955, at 29 years old, he released Maybelline, and in that single song, he solved rock and roll, the electric guitar as the lead voice, the storytelling lyric, the rhythm that made you want to move before you consciously heard it. He figured out the code before most people knew there was a code. And then, in 1958, Johnny B. Good, a song about a guitar-playing kid who's going to make it, written by a black man during segregation, about the dream of recognition in a country that was making that dream as difficult as possible. Here's what most people don't know. The original lyric said a colored boy named Johnny B. Good. He changed it to Country Boy to get it on the radio. He buried the most autobiographical line in the song to make it survivable. And it still became one of the most famous songs ever recorded. That song traveled so far, it's literally in space. In 1977, NASA put Johnny B. Good on the Voyager Golden Record, launched into the cosmos as one of the sounds of Earth. When a committee member called rock music too adolescent to include, Carl Sagan replied, "There are a lot of adolescents on the planet. The song left our solar system in 2012. It's still moving." John Lennon once said, "If you tried to give rock and roll another name, you might call it Chuck Berry. Not an influence on it, not an early pioneer of it, the name itself, the thing itself."
Go, Johnny, go, go. Go, Johnny.
Here's what I keep coming back to. Every sound you've loved on this list, every riff that changed how you heard music, every song that made you understand what this whole thing could actually do to a person, that whole inheritance traces back here to a man in St. Louis in the middle of the 20th century who found a new way to make sound and then gave it to the world.